Why should you never buy a piece of property, or rent for that matter, in a community that has an HOA, or we know it as a homeowners association, sometimes called an owners association? It boils down to two simple reasons. One, your freedoms will be greatly restricted, and it's going to hit your wallet. And in some situations, both of those will be greatly impacted. Typically, the more urban of an environment that you live, the lesser your freedoms and the more expensive an HOA will be most of the time. I would say suburban areas just outside major cities are probably a little more expensive than inner cities. It just kind of depends on where you're at. Also, it's going to vary what region of the country that you're in. So as a renter, maybe you don't pay for the costs of owners associations directly. However, you can bet that when your lease is renewed, whether that be 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you can bet that your landlord is going to pass those charges, those expenses on to you by increasing your monthly rent. So you might not be immediately impacted, but you can certainly bet that you will be in the future. So there are some positives people say, such as increased property values, making sure all the homes look similar, grass and everything is somewhat congruent and follows a certain pattern. And I would say that those added bonuses, benefits, are simply not worth it. You may disagree, but most of the time, most of the people that I know, and myself working in the real estate industry, I have found that most of the time it's nothing but an annoyance 98% of the time. I'm gonna give you a few examples of this. So let's say, and another thing, some HOAs are more strict than others. They're all different. And however, they're always ever changing. What might be legal in a HOA this year might be illegal next year. They have their little committees, usually consisted of little HR Karens and such, or people at home with nothing to do. They're just bored. Sometimes older individuals, they just have nothing to do, so that's their thing. They like to run around on their golf carts and with their notepads and mark and cite and issue fines and citations. And that's what they do. So basically, give you some examples. I had a friend that lived in a community, and they had a rule that on trash day, say trash day was on Wednesday, they pick up on the Wednesday morning, and if they did not have their trash cans pushed back to the house in a certain area on the side of the garage by dark, they would get a citation. And he worked late, and his wife with the kids would just be too busy, and oftentimes they wouldn't have time to push those cans back before dark. And so by the time he got ready to sell his home, he had accrued thousands of dollars in fines or citations from this HOA that he had to figure out a way to pay out so they could take the lien off the house so he could sell it. And I've heard another situation of an older gentleman that had a square of sod missing on the backside of his home, up against the backside that could not be seen from the sidewalk, the road, or anything. Completely unseen. And until he replaced that one little square of sod, they fined him something like $25 or $50 a week until he replaced that. And other situations, I have heard of people being fined for having too many cars in the driveway, working on cars in the driveway, having a tree or shrub cut down in a yard without prior approval or getting a permit from the HOA. And another thing that is just crazy to me, if you want to paint your house a certain color, you want to paint your front door a certain color, or you want a certain style of front door, all of these things have to be approved by the HOA. So in reality, you don't own your property. The HOA owns your property. In another situation, let's say you buy a townhouse and your townhouse is connected to 4 other townhouses. So there's sets of townhouses in a townhouse community. You got 5 here, 5 here, 5 here. Well, let's say the HOA says, hey, your building needs a new roof. And let's say you're even a roof inspector. You know roofs in and out. Well, let's say that they put it to a vote and your other 4 neighbors vote yes on a new roof. You vote no because you don't think it needs one, even though it might look like it needs one. Well, guess what? Now they all voted against you. Now you have to pay for it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So let's say there's $100,000 divided by 5. There you got to come up with that money. So you got your regular monthly HOA dues or quarterly or annually, however they pay them out. That does not include large jobs. That's just street lights, pool maintenance, tennis court maintenance, just nonsense, which most of the time, most people don't use those things anyways. They just pay for them for maybe 5 or 10% of people that do use them. But anything extra, new roof, new driveway, let's say the HOA says you need to get your house painted. All of that is extra money that you got to come up with, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you go against them and they vote against you, they'll put a lien on your house. And you have to settle that lien before you ever decide to move said property. So there's a million reasons not to buy a property or invest in properties with HOAs. There's one exception to this, and that is if you are the owner, the manager of the HOA. Let's say, and this usually only applies in commercial situations. Let's say you own a business park, and that business park has 5 buildings. Well, let's say you also own the HOA that manages the common areas of that business park. You bill your tenants for the extra HOA. You get the money, you manage the money pool, you manage the jobs that money goes towards. That is the only exception when you are the person that owns and manages said HOA and the money, the finances for that said HOA. And that is a super rare situation where you would be the owner and manager of an HOA like that. So in other words, 98.9% of the time, run for the hills when you hear of an HOA. Just do it. It is totally not worth it. And the level of freedom that you have and money that you save by not being in an HOA, whether that be you're actually living in the property or it's a rental home for you, you're going to experience greater profits, greater freedoms. You want to have a bonfire in your backyard, you can do it. You want to cut your grass every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks instead of every week, you can do it. I mean, the sky is the limit. You want to add a 3rd or 4th garage onto your garage, you can do it. You don't have one Karen in the HR committee or running the HR or head of the HR committee, the HOA committee, saying, hey, we don't think you should add that 3rd garage. Why? Well, because we don't think it would just look good. It would not look good. So, I mean, there's a million reasons. You're going to save money. You got more freedom. And again, there's the one exception if you're going to be the owner and manager. But what are your thoughts on homeowners associations? What stories do you have on owners associations? Please leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear what stories you have. So there's apparently one story that we had on one of our past presidents. I think we all know who I'm talking about, who's very, very big in the real estate industry. I'm not going to mention his name because they'll certainly shadow ban the video. But there was a story. He had a property, a home in a very strict HOA that said that you can't have a flagpole in the front yard over 20 feet high. So what did he do? He put a 40-foot flagpole in the front yard. And of course they started citing him. And he said, okay, well, you're going to cite me. And so to remedy the problem, what he did is he built a 20-foot mound hill up to the flagpole thereby making the pole only 20 foot high. So there's always ways around these nonsense HOA rules if you want to play games with them, but who really has the time and energy to play games, really? Because then they'll just change the law the next year, and then you got to deal with that again. So you can play games with them if you want to, but just know they'll just rewrite or reword the law the very next year, and you'll have to go back and change it up. That's how it works. So tap the thumbs up icon, share this video. If you want to save time and money and be more free, stay clear of HOAs or homeowners associations. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.